MXGP, the podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of our MXGP, the official podcast, with me, Paul Malin, and my co-host from Fly Racing, Jason Thomas, where today, episode 8, we're going to be talking about everything that happened over the last 3 Grand Prix in MXGP, where it was the first time we had a triple header moving through France, Germany, and more recently into Latvia. And what a weekend it was there in Kegums, where both the twins, Sasha and Lucas, went 1-1-1. They already arrived there with the championship leaders' red plates anyway. They dominated the Grand Prix. They've extended their leads massively over their rivals, and we've had brothers win before on the same weekend. The Porcells back in 2007, I believe, but never twin brothers. And of course, they both lead the championship anyway. So we'll talk a little bit about that during the course of this podcast. But before we do any of that, I want to bring in Jason Thomas. Jason, first of all, how are you? What have you been up to? I guess it's been a little bit busy over there because AMA Outdoor has just started. You've had 2 rounds. Kawasaki looking good in 250 with Seth and Levi, first of all. What's it been like being back at the races outdoors, outside of the stadium?
Yeah, it has been busy. Since I left you in France there, we, of course, started Pro Motocross Championship and 2 rounds through that. So, yeah, just a lot of rinse, repeat, go to the races, do all the back-end work, as you know all too much about. And, yeah, but it's been a fantastic couple of weeks so far. A lot of storylines. And as we'll get into, I think round 3 probably has the most storylines of any. So, been a great start so far, and I've been watching all of you from afar, travel all across Eastern and I guess Western and Eastern Europe there, and trying to keep up with all the craziness that you guys have had as well.
Yeah, well, obviously, it's been a bit busy, as you know, 3 in a row. But what about the Lawrence brothers? Of course, they sit first and second in outdoors now with Hunter leading jet. Hayden Deegan has come up into the pro class, riding 450. He's 3rd overall in standings. Is it going as expected, or have there been 1 or 2 surprises like Dylan Ferrandis, for instance, on the Ducati, got 4th overall at Hangtown, or the strong start from Jorge Prado in outdoors on his KTM? Are there others? You know, Chase Sexton, obviously Eli Tomac, obviously had his issues at round 1.
Yeah, I think the opening round was fairly predictable. You know, Jet coming off an injury, Hayden's first 450 race, you know, Prado being back to form, like all those things I think were kind of easy to see through. You know, Hunter had a lot of momentum and was the most, I think, just prepared and just kind of kept on doing what he had been doing in Monster Energy Supercross. So between both classes, nothing really jumped off the page at round 1. Round 2, though, I felt like a lot of surprises. How quickly Jet made the turn and back to the old Jet, the healthy Jet. And I don't even want to say healthy. He's not fully healthy, but he rode as if he was healthy. Prado, meltdown weekend, not his fault. You know, the engine mechanical there really ruined his day. Starting on the very outside gate in Moto 2 left him really no chance for success at all. You know, Deegs making strides forward. So it's kind of been a tale of 2 different weekends. Felt a little bit different each time. And what I thought was going to be a lot of uncertainty and a lot of surprise at the opener was just a week delayed. And I was more like, it was more of an eye-opening weekend at round 2 versus round 1. So maybe round 3, who knows, right? Like to me, it kind of leaves the door wide open to a lot of different things that could happen.
Yeah, well, obviously, we'll talk briefly about round 3 in a moment because we just mentioned the Hunter and Jet Lawrence, the 2 brothers there, obviously leading first and second in 450. History was made in Latvia, round 8 of the FIA Motocross World Championship, the MXGP of Latvia at Kegums. As we mentioned at the top of the program, the Coonans went 1-1-1. They already arrived with the leaders' red plates. Lucas now 62 points clear in MXGP. Sasha 37 points clear. It was a phenomenal weekend. 20 Grand Prix victories now for Lucas, 6 for Sasha. I guess in terms of weekends, it doesn't get any better than that. It's the first time I've seen it, but I've got a feeling it might not be the last, you know? What are your thoughts on Latvia, just with those 2, first of all?
Well, it certainly felt like a pivotal weekend. Just the points really shifted. You know, I would say like the trend was intact as far as like who had momentum, both the Coonan brothers, but the points really started to build a gap here, not necessarily through performance, but through kind of attrition, you know? So it's way too early. And you may note of that as like for Jeffrey Hurlings, which we'll talk about like points wise, It feels like he's going to be on the outside looking in, but we just know there's way too much racing. Anything can happen in one race. Forget about one weekend, one individual race. The tide can turn in these championships. So I'm trying to not be too much victim of the moment and draw assumptions, because that will typically get you in trouble. But for now, it really felt like Latvia could be a deciding factor. Maybe not when we get to Australia, but right now it felt like Latvia was a big one.
Yeah. So many things going in their favor, maybe, when you kind of delve deeper and things like that. But I guess the big news was that first thing Monday morning, they're on a plane to the US, Thunder Valley, Colorado, which is obviously the next race this weekend for you guys outdoors on our weekend off. You scroll social media, there's a lot of hype with both the MX2 and MXGP points leaders from the World Championship opting to race rather than taking a weekend off. It's been busy on the socials. They're obviously putting in some miles on the bikes, just getting acclimatized, acclimated, as you guys say over there, just trying to get some laps, some miles on some familiar dirt. It's been busy out there, and it's going to be busy for those guys. Obviously, you're a little bit closer to it as well.
Yeah, and I just wonder, who am I to say what's the best plan? But it feels like a lot to ask of them. They fly the other side of the world, which you and I know kind of what that makes you feel like. It's a difficult recovery coming off of a GP, right? So it's not like they were 100% ready to go. They're already, have a tough weekend. Then they get on a plane, fly across, 10 time zones probably, and they get to California and immediately are back on track on Tuesday, out putting motorcycles through its paces. And I'm sure some of that helps burn through the jet lag, getting blood flowing. But then on Wednesday, they're back on track again. And then on Friday, it's kind of a unique dynamic for Thunder Valley. They're going to be back on track twice on Friday riding before the race on Saturday. So I'm more curious, are they at full strength? Is there any signs of the wear and tear and travel and time zones? And then, speaking of the elevation at this particular round, it's one of the most difficult on that front on the body. I don't know. I think the upside is they're super young, and that helps. Their bodies are going to be very resilient and bounce back, and they're probably going to have more to give than, say, someone in their 30s. But it's a lot to throw at them all at once over the course of 7 days. So I'm kind of open-minded as to what it looks like maybe at the 28-minute mark on Saturday afternoon. Like, that is going to be an interesting dynamic.
And you mentioned the elevation there. Obviously, Denver is known as the Mile High City, isn't it? So, and the track, I think, is even higher up the mountain than that. So even more. What is the kind of altitude there? 1,500, 1,600 meters, something like that?
You're probably going to be close to 2,000 meters at the actual racetrack. So that's a unique one. I don't know that they've ever raced at anything that high. I know they've spent time in Andorra and in all these things, but a lot of racing experience at elevation, and it doesn't just have to be that they're feeling the effects physically of elevation. I know they're super fit, and I don't think they're just going to be overwhelmed, but the variables of the motorcycle, right? Like working through getting the bike where they want it, and the starts are going to be completely different. They have to change gearing. They have to change ECU mapping. Like, there's going to be a lot of different variables thrown at them all at once that they're going to have to parse through. And I think it's going to be a great test of how do they manage all of these things over the course of a weekend. They'll have a lot of help. They'll have a lot of knowledgeable people around them. But as 19-year-olds, it's a lot to take on. And also, as you mentioned, hype, the whole world is expecting fireworks from them on their first weekend, outside of Motocross of Nations, their first weekend racing in America. So again, for me to predict how that's going to go, I think would be very foolish. There's just way too much that could go a lot of different directions. It could all go incredibly well. These kids can ride out of their minds. So it could all go super well, or it could be a really challenging weekend for all of the multitude of reasons I listed too.
I was going to say, as two riders, obviously, they will want to hold themselves accountable. But are they there to win, really? Or are they there just to get their feet wet, just to sort of see how the schedule works and things like that? Because, whether we do see them head over there to the US in the future remains to be seen. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about it on both sides of the Atlantic, but right now they are in MXGP. They are both chasing world titles and things like that. But just seems to me, first and foremost, that it's just a feet wetting exercise, if you like. But never rule anything out either.
Yeah, I think it's all perspective. And I truly believe it's going to be situational on the weekend. I've talked to a lot of smart people, from Roger DeCoster to Sebastian Tortelli, speaking with you now about it. And everybody kind of has a different opinion, or, maybe with Roger DeCoster, he's a little biased, hoping that what he wants to happens, is where they're patient. They, just like you're saying, a feet wetting experience, looking forward to 2027. I don't know if that's necessarily how Sasha Kunin operates. I've never seen him really go about things that way. I think the odds of Lucas taking that approach are simply much better, and some of it's going to be situational, as I mentioned, with the starts. If Sasha gets out front, he's not going to back it down and just take whatever comes. He's going to send it. Like, that's who he is. That's what he does. Being true to himself, I would expect no different. And with Lucas, I think the same could be true. If he gets a hole shot, his instincts are going to be, I'm going to try to disappear here. I don't know that the Lawrences are going to necessarily allow that. Like, they're incredibly good starters. I think if he gets in front of them, they're going to be right on his tail. I have nothing but a mountain of evidence to back that up. They're always at the front. So I think Lucas could find himself just settling in. And if it's in front of behind of the Lawrences, like, just taking things as they come. And hey, if it's a fourth is the best on the day, that's okay. If it's a second on the day, that's great. Whatever may happen, don't force the issue and just allow this to take form. But for Sasha, I think he'll get a great start, and I think you'll see him push every step of the way. And hopefully it goes swimmingly. You never really know. But again, there's a lot that can and will happen throughout the course of these individual motos that I think will dictate how they respond in kind. A lot of, like, if Lucas is running around in 12th, he's not going to take outsized risk to try to get to the podium by the end of the moto. He's going to work forward, and, the easy out for them is say, hey, we're leading the world championship. Always the goal was, we want experience, so the next time we do this, it's a little bit easier. But you and I both know a racer is a racer. They get out front. They're not going to just take it easy because of the world championship. They're going to go try to win the race.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's definitely providing plenty of bench race opportunity amongst the communities and media, both sides of the Atlantic, fans worldwide. So I guess we just wait to sort of see how this one pans out. And I'm guessing it's not their first race, or their only race in 2026 in the US. Did I hear 2 or maybe 3?
Yeah, the plan, I think, for sure is Southwick, which is they would leave directly from South Africa, go to Southwick, which is a nice play on words. And then I think Ironman is still a possibility. I guess we'll kind of see how these two go and how they're feeling. And I think Ironman is still a little bit more up in the air, where Southwick's much more locked in. I think travel plans have already been booked for Southwick. So you get to see him at least twice this summer, which is, for me, I'm very familiar. You're even more familiar. But I think for a lot of American fans, this is going to be a bit of an awakening as far as familiarity for these two kids that are really kind of taking the series by storm for MXGP.
Yeah, I mean, it could be potentially 15-ish races in a row for them, which, like say, a little bit further down the stretch, we'll see how that all plays out and where they're at in the championship over here as well. Let's just crack on with Latvia then. Obviously, that was the most recent round that we've had in the MXGP World Championship. Mentioned at the top of the broadcast, Lucas, 62 points over Hurlings now, who's second. And unusually for Honda, I guess, Jeff went sort of 2-3 over the course of the weekend, and then obviously had his DNF in the second race. Expensive GP, his second non-finish, as we said it, in as many weeks, because he had that one in Germany. Strange couple of rounds for Honda. 62 points is a big gap, but we're only round 8, coming into round 9, our next race, which will be in Italy. He's lost championships with margins bigger than that. He's pulled back margins bigger than that. 75 when he got landed on by Monticelli, who decided to use him as a rucksack in Os in the Netherlands a couple of years ago when he won that title in 2021. So it's not over, but you've also got to look at the situation where Lucas has been so strong. He's got 10 race wins so far this year, and or thereabouts, and he's basically looking really, really good when he gets to the front. So Lucas was on fire. Jeffrey was unfortunate. How did you see the MXGP and the MXGP of Latvia for the MXGP riders?
Yeah, and for Jeffrey, he's been in this situation before, but it's usually of his own accord, crashes, incidents on the racetrack, not so much the mechanical issues, so it has to be a familiar feeling on a points front of, hey, I'm riding incredibly well, but there have been these complications that have really impacted my point situation. So I would guess the feeling is similar, but this one may be a little bit harder to swallow because they've just been random mechanical difficulties. And riding wise, he hasn't really put a foot wrong too much. And you could say, sure, he hasn't won every GP, but he's been in the fight every single time, and he's been on the podium, and he's overcome adversity, and he's done the thing that would put him squarely in the championship fight to what he can control, per se. Yeah. And now he's going to need help. For lack of a better term, he's going to need help from Lucas Kunin. And, we all hope that, these American rounds go well and safely and all those things. But for Jeffrey, he's probably cheering Lucas on to go race everywhere. Go race middle of the week. Go race in America. Because that's what could drag him back near the championship lead, is some sort of incident for Lucas that hasn't befallen him yet. We got close with the clutch thing in Latvia. That maybe could have gone worse. For Lucas, it didn't. But yeah, to see him, win another world championship, I think it's fair to say he's going to need help. I don't think he's just going to win out the way Lucas is riding and claw that amount of points back.
And I must say, both incidents where Jeffrey went out, unfortunately, impeccably well behaved, no toy throwing and this kind of thing. You just saw, I think, from the back when he went out in the second race in Latvia, where just the frustration, just did that with his hands, didn't he? And then, and that was it. We saw him calmly pushing the bike off, and the next thing we saw him just walking out the back of pit lane. And in terms of his podiums, he's had 5 podiums, as you said. He's been on the podium. He's done everything right. He's overcome adversity. He's got 3 Grand Prix wins, 2 seconds in the first 6 rounds. But then the other 3 rounds, Switzerland, he was 10th overall, 9th overall in Germany, 10th again in Latvia, but they've all had mechanical issues. Lucas was 8th in Switzerland, and that was the weekend where they both threw that chain in that deep rut. They weren't the only ones, Adamo and Matis Valan in MX2 also. But when you look at Lucas, he's been inconsistent every now and again. 5th in Argentina, 8th, as we said, but he was very, very quick in Switzerland, so you can't really count that one. 7th in Trentino, that's been his bogey round, but he does have 4 wins and a second, and he's been on the podium the last 3 rounds, second, first. So, that's where he's kind of been making his, he's been very consistent in that respect, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and we shall see how this goes from here. If you look at last year's championship, there were opportunities. Febvre really made the most of those. A race like Sweden, I'm not really sure what Lucas was doing. It was by far one of his worst performances of the season. There was, from what I know, no real explanation to point to as like, oh, that's why. It was just a bad weekend where he gave a lot of points back to Febvre. That kind of thing can happen. And that's kind of it's either going to be an injury, mechanical failure, or stringing it together a few weekends where Lucas is just way off his game for no, explainable reason. That's how this championship fight's going to come back. 62 points is a lot to just race your way back into, but
it's only a round. It's only a round in the greater scheme of things. 60 points per GP if you get all 10 for winning the quali race and then go 1-1 on Sunday. So actually, we can all go, wow, it's 62 points. It is if you're going 1-2-2-1 with your main rival over the course of the season. But like I say, it's easier to fly backwards in time to the US because, with the jet lag and everything else, you can travel all day to get to California, 12 hours or whatever. And then you can still go to sleep and wake up without an alarm at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because of the time zones. When you've been there for pretty much a week and then you come back and you've got to shift forwards in time, it's so much harder, as you probably know, with the amount of times that you come, back and forth across the Atlantic, dealing with that shift forward time, and trying to get on your body clock. And then go race. I'm
certainly not, mathematically eliminating Jeffrey from this thing. I just come back to he's going to need some help. And however that may come, poor performance, mechanical, injury, whatever. But I guess what I come back to is you said that 2-1-1-2. I think if all things are equal, we're going to see a lot of that. They have just proven to kind of be the class of the field. So it's going to take some sort of exogenous event. Something else is going to have to happen, a crash, 15 races in a row, wearing them down, like something like that is going to have to shift here, because if they're just going to perform on the same level every single weekend, 62 is a lot in that sense. But we know racing doesn't go that way. There's going to be some chaos somewhere along the way before we get to Australia.
Yeah. What about Kai de Wolf, second overall at the weekend, and the 3 races that we had, including the quali race? He went 3-2-3. He's up to 5th in the championship now. He's got his second podium as a rookie in the class. Seems to be improving all the time. Obviously, he had some issues pre-season with a couple of injuries that didn't help him. But I think that 5-week break has done him okay. And, to get his second podium just before the next weekend off that is coming up this weekend when you guys are in Thunder Valley, quite timely and a positive base to continue building from for de Wolf.
Yeah, I really felt like that was a bit of a breakout weekend. Now, I know he wants to go up and race with Lucas. They have that rivalry that went on in MX2, and just because it's been maybe on the back burner doesn't mean it's not still there. These two guys are not huge fans of each other, so that battle's coming between those two. I think we will see that, the Lucas Kuhn and Kai de Wolf battle rekindled. But this was a big step in the right direction, I believe, to go past Jeffrey and be able to sustain that. It felt a little bit different, and you could point to the conditions and say, hey, well, the track much better at what Kai excels in. That's fair. That's okay too. But we're going to have a lot of tracks that favor what Kai does very well coming soon. I just think it was a big sign that Kai is about to emerge onto the scene as a potential race winner and be in the fight. You watch in France, you watch in Germany, he wasn't capable of staying at the front the entire time. He pushed hard, crazy aggressive, making aggressive moves. But in the end, he just didn't have enough yet. I looked at this as a sign that he's getting really close, and those guys are going to be in for a battle here very soon.
Yeah, well, the last 5 rounds, he's not finished lower than 5th, and that was in Germany. But he got his first podium in Sardinia, round 4. That was 3rd overall. He's been 4th, 5th, and 2nd since then. So very consistent, which is what you'd expect a former world champion to be.
It just felt like maybe he was missing like that last 1 or 2%, though. Watching it, yes, the results are there. But to go with Jeffrey and Lucas when they're on point seemed like he was just kind of missing that extra little bit. And that's what I'm looking for. I think that is coming. And I saw glimpses of it in Latvia, and I had not quite seen it yet.
Yeah. What about Romain Febvre? He got his 3rd podium of the season. He was a consistent 3rd, a couple of 4ths and a 2nd in the final race. They say, don't they, it's harder to win. It's harder to defend a championship than it is to win a championship. And obviously, it took him 10 years to sort of win his 2nd title. And here he is again. And it looked like it started off very well in Argentina, almost, came close to winning the 2nd race before Jeffrey overhauled him. Then he had that crash in Andalusia, and he's been kind of playing catch up ever since. So 3 podiums. Should we expect more from Romain Febvre? He hasn't finished lower than 10th. Again, that was in Germany, but we obviously had issues there. But 2nd, a couple of 3rds. Those 3rds come in the last 3 rounds, round 6 in France, and again here in Latvia. And when you look at the results, consistent. 5, 4, 6, 3, 10 was a bogey, and then 3 in Latvia. You just feel that there's more to come. Not sure what's going on, behind the scenes, or whether it's just wrong place, wrong time, poor starts, or just an accumulation of different things. But second half of the season, as we move into that, we would expect to see a little bit more consistency, more times on the podium, more race wins, perhaps, from Febvre.
Yeah, I wonder if the race wins are coming. I do think we'll have podiums. He's consistent. He's been doing this a very long time, so he understands how to execute a race weekend. I wonder if we're seeing, last year we didn't see it, but I just wonder if we're seeing his age a little bit this year. Can he sprint at the very front and go with them the entire time when Lucas and Jeffrey are pushing each other? Not so much different than my comments on de Wolf. I just don't know that has the sharp end as much as he did a year ago. It just seemed like the pace wasn't too much for him last year. He was kind of in control of things, where this year he's just maybe on the back foot a little bit. And it could just be you don't have the same amount of intensity and adrenaline that he had a year ago, right? Like defending the championship's more difficult. could it just be, Father Time is showing up in subtle ways? That doesn't mean he's not riding really well, but does he have the, white hot intensity that the other guys do? All those things could be true. But you also have to look at the results and the performances and say, yeah, it's just a touch off of what we saw a year ago. And instead of the race wins, maybe that ends up being a podium, and that's okay. It's okay. I don't know that we're going to see a string of race wins anytime soon. I haven't seen performances that would really indicate that. I've seen a lot of things that would tell me he's going to be around the podium a lot. But I haven't seen him like perform in a way that he's going to be able to ride away at the front. It just seems like he's capable of being in the fight, but maybe not necessarily leading the charge.
Yeah. What about Tim Geiser? 4th overall in Latvia, 7th in the qualifying race, a 5th, a 4th. Just wondering, he's had a couple of rounds where he's had some big bangs, hasn't he? France, that first turn crash with Tom Vial, you were there, where Vial pretty much crashed in front of him. Tim had nowhere to go. We'll talk about that in a moment, because obviously he was wearing an Alpine Star sort of Tech Air vest, which I've got some numbers on that. Then he had his first lap crash in race 2 in Germany, where he just turned past pit lane and sort of knacked his way off the side or Superman aired himself off the side of the bike into that first dip. Another heavy hit there. And then, it just seems like he's one step forward, 2 steps back at the moment. He just seems to get himself into a good position, good solid consistency, and then there's just something else. Just can't catch a break at the moment. But 4th overall, I'm sure maybe quietly happy with that, given everything that had been going on the previous 2 rounds. But it's just not consistently happening for him at the moment, is it? And he's quite a way off the championship lead at the moment as well.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I've expected more from Tim Geiser. I really have. I thought that maybe at Trentino, that was a turn. He was dealing with a rib injury, still found a way to win race 2. I was like, that's something that could be a huge kind of feather in his cap moving forward. But we really haven't seen continuation from that. Like, I'm just kind of wondering, was that an outlier? Is this, was that what we should expect, or is more of this what we should expect? And I know it has not been easy. That crash in France derailed championship. It felt like, because he wasn't able to race, that individual race with the stuff that was going on with the motorcycle. But if you told me that this season would be a lot of riding around near 5th place, I wouldn't have expected that. Truly, I wouldn't. I really hold Tim's talent and skill in a high regard. And I always kind of consider, hey, if everything's right, he's healthy and things are going well, you're going to see him in the podium fight, if not winning. Like, that is just what I have come to expect from Tim Geiser. And I didn't have any reason to not expect that in 2026, but we haven't really seen that enough, and it hasn't been easy. He's been trying to overcome a lot of adversity along the way. So I don't know. I'm not ready to write him off by any means, but I also have to be honest and say I've expected more, and he probably would agree. He probably expects more of himself too. Like, I don't think that would be, stepping out too much to say that. But I'm hoping we get more of that, because I think when Tim Geiser's right, he brings a lot to this championship. Like, he can really add another layer of complexity to the fight at the front. So let's hope that's more common than we've seen so far.
Yeah, that first turn crash in France, obviously we saw Tom Vial outside and then sort of shoot back across out of control, and then Tim was right there. And I heard at the weekend in Latvia from Filippo, the Alpine Star guy, that when Tim hit him and literally came to an abrupt halt and then was over the bars, the G that went through that vest was 24G, so 24 times his body weight. Now, if he's 80K, that's the equivalent of hitting a brick wall at 50 miles an hour, 90 kilometers per hour. So the vest, the Tech Air vest, did its job in more than ways than one, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think that's been true. If you look at not even necessarily just the Tech Air for off-road, look at, MotoGP. How many people has it saved from injury, right? So it's I think that will be the norm moving forward, is even if riders are injured, the severity that could have been so much worse without something like that. So for Tim's sake, I'm very thankful he added on.
Yeah. Paul Jonas, home GP, 5th overall, 7.5 on the Sunday. His best result of the season. 5th overall. A rider who, again, showed promise at the start of the year, was unlucky when they restarted the second race in Argentina because I think he was running second on the original running of that. But the 2017 MX2 World Champion showing that he's still got it, still got speed. And I guess when you get the opportunity at his age now to be racing home Grand Prix the way that he did, first of all, you've got to embrace it, haven't you? The last time he was able to race one, he managed to get on the podium there, second overall a few years ago now. But to go there, be fit, be healthy, as he said, the last couple of years leading in, he's got injured. So, that one seemed like it meant a lot to him. And to see him up there and pushing and fighting and hustling, it was great to see PJ really enjoying the moment and really sort of soaking in that atmosphere of being at home, because you don't get many of those in your career anyway. And we don't know how many he's got left. But, it was a good showing from the Latvian.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's is such a likable guy. And, to be fair, it hasn't been easy for him the last few years. A lot of injuries, a lot of time away from the racetrack. But it's weekends like that. And you can just say, well, it's his home GP. What do you expect? That's fine. But I think it just goes to show what he's capable of when everything's good and he's healthy and he gets a good start. Like, he is still wildly talented and capable of going very, very fast. We just unfortunately don't see it enough. We don't see him riding to his potential enough, which is unfortunate.
Maybe that result. Yeah, maybe that result is a trigger for him now.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Because this is a guy that's very easy to cheer for me. I just genuinely like this guy. And when you see a guy that's super likable and also things haven't been very easy for, that makes me an immediate, get out of my chair and cheer for him when he's riding like he was in Latvia. So is it going to be conditional? Is it going to be situational? Maybe. But I would say, as most things are in racing, the starts are probably going to be the linchpin for that. If he puts himself in good position, good things will probably happen.
Yeah. Andrea Adamo, Ruben Fernandez, they were second and third in Adamo was Adamo and Fernandez second and third in Germany. There was no Vial in Germany or Latvia. So obviously Fernandez being a good wingman for HRC when things kind of just fall off the radar a little bit, and Andrea Adamo obviously getting his podium. Those guys thinking about moving forward to Italy, hard pack riders and things like that, obviously could be a real thorn in the side for that championship battle, those championship battles at the sharp end as well, couldn't they? Because Adamo, I think, is more than familiar with Montevaki. Ruben Fernandez, probably a better hard pack rider than a sand rider. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I would imagine so. And, to see those guys on the podium in Germany, that was also pretty decent, wasn't it? Especially for Ruben, his first one since China last year, the penultimate round. And, these are two guys that, as you just mentioned a moment ago, starts could be key. Give them starts, get them at the front, could be mixing for more podiums and potential race wins.
Yeah, I mean, they both rode that. Germany, for them to be 2-3, I think was surprising. For myself, you wake up and you're going about your life and then, the race is on. I jump in really quickly because it's still, early morning when these races start. For them to be there, I was surprised, and yes, there were, extenuating circumstances, mechanical things going on. That's all fine. But in the end, they still went out and executed and rode incredibly well and ended up on the podium in that individual race. So they deserve credit. Sure. I think they're both, more for Andrea than Ruben, but, Andrea's in this kind of formative period in his MXGP career where I think a lot of people are looking at him trying to decide what the trajectory is going to be. What should expectations be? Is he going to follow through with the likes of Kai and these riders who are immediately pushing themselves to the front of the class? Like, it's an important time for Andrea for his future career, I think, because I think Red Bull KTM is committed to him, but I'm sure he wants them to be locked in for the long term and say, no, he's got it. He's going to figure this thing out. Let's go ahead and give him a long-term contract and believe that he's going to take the steps needed. So it's really important for Andrea to have rides like that. And it's more of like a confirmation that MXGP is going to be a go for him. And I think he's doing that early on. Yeah. He's already doing that. What I think of immediately though is for the championship fight, if there's a way for Jeffrey or whoever you fancy calling their way back into this title fight to chase down Lucas, you're going to need riders like Kai, riders like Ruben, riders like Andrea, all those riders to be Paul's Jonas to ride well. So when Lucas has a bad day, it doesn't have to be a DNF. It could just be a crash, a poor performance. You need all them in between. You need Jeffrey to go 1, and you need Lucas to go like 12, like a Sweden type day. That's going to be a huge difference. If those guys are out of the fight, not riding well, aren't up to the task, and Lucas is like, yeah, well, I was in 20th, but I was able to claw back to 3rd because these guys are nowhere.
Yeah.
That's going to make the job that much harder for a guy like Jeffrey. So yes, they're in their own little world trying to be better and fight for contracts. But I think in the big picture, they could play a big role given a certain situation.
Yeah, well, for Lucas, he's got 10 race wins now. 4 of those double race wins: Spain, Sardinia, Germany, and Latvia. But then having said that, if we just briefly go back to France, which was the first of our 3 in a row, the podium there was Jeffrey Hurlings, Lucas Kuhn, and Roman Febvre. You were there. What do you see on that weekend that kind of, kept you enthused about this championship?
Well, the fight at the front was all time. And, I really thought it was kind of a big moment for Jeffrey, to push back a little bit against Lucas. And it came down to the last corner there. But it's kind of the old guard versus the new a little bit, and we've seen it regardless of which continent you're on. You see these moments where there's a shift in place and there's a battle for supremacy and who's kind of the alpha in the class. And I would even go back to a year ago. It was the same dynamic, but it was between Romain and Lucas. And even the year before that, or actually last year, before Tim exited the series, you could see Lucas and Tim having that same kind of confrontation. And this year, it's Lucas and Jeffrey. So Lucas is taking on all of the established, champions and everybody that we've come to know as the best of the best. Lucas is having to take them on one at a time, right? It's like, okay, next man up. It's like the final boss in a video game. Like, now I've got to go against Jeffrey Hurlings, who is considered one of the best ever. And we're getting to watch that in real time. Them all get to go at it here. And nothing's assured. Lucas has not ever won a world championship. Nothing is guaranteed. But it's fascinating to watch him have to go up against the best of the best one at a time. It just seems that way by happenstance. He's had to take them all on, and they're all different. Like, the way they go about things are all incredibly different. But I'm really looking forward to more of that in 2026, is watching Lucas step into that. And I think, as I previously mentioned, I think Kai is about to join that type of fight also, where he's now going to have to establish himself as one of, if not the best guys.
Yeah, well, you just get used to being up there, don't you? Being one of those guys, and then that flicks another switch automatically anyway. Before we just get off of France, obviously, I just want to briefly mention Thibaut Beneston. Obviously, he had that incident in race 1. Obviously, he's got life-changing injuries now, we know that. And the family are, just asking to respect their privacy at this time. And, we're all wishing Thibaut Beneston all the very best in his recovery. But what a talent, 2 EMX titles. He's got MX2 Grand Prix victories, race wins. It just goes to show that, doesn't matter who you are, does it? But certainly a talent and one of the nicest riding styles. Not sure what you want to add to that, but like I say, I've seen him since 125s growing up. Just the flamboyancy on a motorcycle made it look so very, very easy. But a shame to sort of see, that he won't be in the paddock at the moment for the foreseeable future anyway. And as I said, just wishing him all the best. Any thoughts from you?
Yeah. It's just, it's of course one of the biggest downsides of the sport. I think as a racer, you always live with this in the back of your mind, that something like this is possible, even though you try to not dwell on it. It's always there. So of course, wishing him the best. And this is a rider who I projected to be a world champion in MX2. His rides, some of his standout rides. I remember Teutschenthal and some of these days where I'm just like, that guy's going to go win a world title. Like, this is a premier talent. And things probably didn't go the way he wanted to in his racing career. But now, he's facing probably the biggest challenge of his life to date. I know there are a lot of people on your side of the Atlantic that are fully have his back, and a lot of people here probably aren't super familiar with him, but regardless, I think we can all relate to kind of the fight he's facing, and we're all pulling for him.
Yeah, and obviously, if you want more information on that, obviously you can go to roadtorecovery.com if you'd like to donate in order to support Thibaut and his family during this difficult time. Any contribution, no matter the size, will provide vital support on the journey ahead for him and his family. Of course, our thoughts with the team as well, because, they've gone from having a couple of riders in the team with Kevin Horgmo to just having one rider in there as well. So, we've got to spare a thought for Joss Salfranc there and everybody there associated with Honda Motor Blues SR Motul. Before we move on, just a quick word from our sponsor for our MXGP podcast, FMF. Quick thank you to you guys, FMF, the Flying Machine Factory, who for more than 50 years have been an integral part of the motocross scene, not just in America, but also here in Europe as well. Always striving for perfection, always innovating. Built by hand from the ground up, FNF continues to innovate, building things the right way, the American way. Right, let's move on to MX2. We'll try and rip through this because, JT, I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. MX2, from one Kunin to the other, Sasha seems to have found his form the last couple of rounds. He arrived in Germany round 7, 8 points down on Simon Langenfelder, left there 3 points clear, and has since increased that gap to 37, and he's won the last 3 of the 4 past races. Sasha, not so much crasher anymore at the moment.
I mean, France, for me, so I was in France with you, of course, as we mentioned. I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw. It was kind of a ho-hum day. I remember driving back towards Toulouse thinking Sasha and Simone Langenfelder were both fortunate that neither of them had a good day today.
Yeah.
Both of them are probably going, got away with one today because I wasn't great and neither was he. So going to have to be better than that. And it's really been a complete divergence since then. Sasha's made the most of it. I'm sure he was frustrated in Teutschenthal not being able to get Milan, not winning the overall because of the financial rewards, of course, just historically grabbing a GP overall. But he goes to the next weekend in Latvia and has a perfect weekend. So he has really taken every advantage of the situation and, moving to Simone Langenfelder, because I think you have to be in the same breath with both of them.
Yeah.
It has been an absolute disaster for the last couple of rounds. And go ahead, please jump in.
Yeah, well, the last 6 races, the last 3 rounds, last 6 motos on a Sunday, 4-7, 8-3, 5-19, the 19 a crash in race 2 in Latvia. And obviously he podiumed at the first 4 rounds. So consistent, the defending champion, a first, a second, 2 wins. No podium in the last 4 rounds. 6th, 5th, and 13. Again, the crash in Latvia. So obviously now second in points and only 3 ahead of Ferrez, the French Grand Prix winner. So he's not now in that same sort of breath right now as Sasha Kunin, because he's 37 clear. He's now under threat from Ferrez in 3rd. So as you said, it was below par in France along with Sasha. But the last 2 rounds where Sasha has kind of excelled, Simon just seems to be sort of, seems to be wearing heavy boots at the moment. Just can't seem to, move along with any kind of urgency.
Yeah, and okay, crashes happen. Race 2 crash, unfortunate. These things happen. But I'm more concerned with kind of the lack of high-end performance. He just looks like one of the guys out there, not
Germany. He said he got a cold or something like that. But
yeah, and that can happen. Like I'm very understanding of that. But also, this is a rider who most of the time is at the front. He's on the podium all the time. And I had no reason to think coming off a championship, being at the kind of upper end of the age range for this class with the experience he has, the equipment he has, I had no reason to think that would change. I thought he would be, if he's not winning races, well, he certainly wouldn't be on the podium, 75% of the time. And this is puzzling for me. And I'm more leaning on you for explanation, because when I watch him, he just doesn't look great. And it's fine. I'm not saying he isn't riding well or anything, but he just looks like one of the other guys, like the Ferrez and McClellan passed him. And, this is a guy that would be able to overcome all that. And yeah, you guys are riding really well, but I'm a defending champ who's been at the front of this class fighting for race wins for going on 5 years now, or, 3 or 4 years at least. I'm not really sure what to make of what I'm seeing from him right now, because I'll even add more. Beginning of the year was exactly what I thought I would see. Him pushing guys around, the alpha of the class. You guys need to get out of my way. And if you don't, I'll move you out of my way. That's what I thought we would see.
Case in point was Perez in the final corner in Argentina.
Yep.
Jumped down the inside of him, shunted him off the track just to go ahead and, get to where he wanted to be.
Yeah. And I see nothing like that right now. So I'm more asking you, what do you think is going on there?
Yeah, I'm also perplexed because you've got a situation where earlier on in the year, he would sit there in his own little world, as we said, just happy to be there in 6th or 7th. And all of a sudden, within the space of 2 laps, he's there fighting for the win and maybe even goes and takes the win, just happy in his own comfortable surroundings, his own ability. But you sort of see him there now in sort of 6th, 7th, 8th, thinking, okay, he's just feeling the track for 2 or 3 laps and then we'll see something. And it's just not happened. So I don't know if he's under the weather, if he's carrying a niggle, or if he's just lost a little bit of confidence. It's just, one of those things. I don't think he's too concerned at the moment, Should he be? Maybe if Sasha starts to be more consistent. But, there's more than just him and Sasha in the championship fight. More on those in a moment. But it just seems like, I don't know, just maybe a little bit on struggle street, just to try and believe in himself, maybe, he tries to push hard and makes a mistake and then it's 1 pass forward and 2 passes back. And then he obviously, trying to overcome that in the next race, pushing too hard. So I don't know. He was unfortunate with the crash, I think, in Latvia, because obviously that affected his overall, is the even more bigger points loss, especially when Sasha goes and wins and gets 25 points. But I don't know. I'm hoping that he can go back to the drawing board and turn things around sooner rather than later, as a neutral.
Yeah, I think this race in Italy upcoming is really important for him because we have this, I would say a little bit unique stretch of where we're 3 in a row, weekend off, 3 in a row. Like the racing is going to come fast and furious. And if you go into a slump the way he just did for 3 rounds again, you could really put yourself in a hole that you're unable to climb out of. So he's got this weekend off. He really needs to kind of find himself, find his form, and come out swinging and change the tone a little bit, I think, in Italy and reestablish himself at the front, which then momentum can snowball in a positive way from there. I don't think it'll take a lot for him to get back to where we all know he should be because he's been there for so long. Like nothing's really changed, I don't think. But momentum goes both ways. And if you let it get away from you in a negative way, it can happen really fast, especially with this many races in short succession. So I think he has to focus. I would throw everything at this Italian round to try to find a way to get a win, because I think that can reset the direction for, I would say, even the long term. Like it can really make that big of an impact.
Sure. Triumph. Obviously, you mentioned one of the riders a moment ago, Guillaume Perez. Well, you mentioned both Perez and McClellan. 9 podiums and 5 race wins between them so far this year. Both have a good turn of speed. We saw that in France, particularly because they were fighting each other for the race win and the Grand Prix victory. I know we were kind of on the edge of our seats at times with their performances there. But what have you made of their sort of last 3 rounds and just general season so far? Because obviously Camden, I think, was lucky in Latvia with that crash in race 1 when he cased that uphill triple. Did bounce back well, though, for a 3-2 second overall. But both riders still very much in the fight. And we've seen from both of them, when they do get to the front, both are very, very quick. Camden particularly is very quick at coming through and sort of forcing the issue to, come from the back to the front. So they've both got a good balance between them, and they are still very much a part of a 2-pronged attack from Triumph towards the KTMs.
Yeah, I don't think anybody should count them out of the championship yet. I really don't, because I think it's difficult to just say, well, yeah, Sasha's rock solid. He's not going to have any issues anywhere. That to me seems foolish to think that. Maybe it comes true. That can happen. That's obviously a potential outcome. But to assume that feels foolhardy to me.
Yeah.
So if you're Guillaume Perez, if you're Simone, if you're McClellan, you have to count on some chaos from Sasha. And then you look at, okay, if that comes, how am I positioned on the backside of that? And they're all in the fight. Perez, I remember leaving France. He's like, hey, I'm going to be in this championship fight. Count on it. Now, I think he thought his results would be a little better in the subsequent rounds after that. And he's lost touch with the very front. But if it was just a Langenfelder question, he's right there. He has closed the gap now to Langenfelder. So it's all, just like in life, it's perspective. What through which lens do you view these things? And I think if you're both of them, you say, well, we're gonna think that moving forward, Sasha's gonna have some sort of challenge somewhere. And when that happens, we're gonna close those points back down. We need to make sure that we are 2, 3, 4 in a close knit points group when that happens. So then we're immediately vaulted into a championship fight. And I think they're doing that. I think they are doing that. So yeah, that's the whole thing. Stay there. Don't have the outlier horrific weekend. If your bad weekend is a 5th, that's pretty good. And you just kind of lie there like a snake in the grass waiting for opportunity to strike. And I think they have been doing that.
Yeah. Mattis Valan, I think, one of the form guys at the moment, 4 consecutive podiums, the only rider in MX2 to do that in the last 4 rounds, a couple of thirds, a win and a third. He's now 6th in points. Seems to have found his stride, which is nice for Kawasaki and their MX2 project.
Yeah, I mean, the start of the season was nothing short of terrible for them. And I came in expecting the world. So you wonder, how has he strung these podiums together, but still sitting 6th in points? Well, those first rounds were not great. Plus, the derailed train in Switzerland certainly didn't help anything. But now he's back to form. This is the guy that I expected to see all season. This is the guy that I watched, ride so incredibly well at Motocross of Nations in Indiana last year. And I have really high expectations for Valan. I think more race wins are coming. Is he a little bit better on hard pack than sand? Sure. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's not a wild assumption to make for a young Frenchman, right? Like, his sand skills will improve, but he's proven on hard pack he can win immediately. So yeah, I like everything I'm seeing. It's just unfortunate that he dug himself such a big hole early that he's going to have to chase himself out of over the next 15 rounds.
Yeah, well, I mean, stranger things have happened, and as we said, we're not even halfway. We've got a 19 round series. We're going into round 9 next.
Oh yeah, so 10 or 11 rounds. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's kind of, but 4 podiums in a row is pretty impressive. He gets another one in Italy, 5 in a row. It's massive steps, massive strides in the right direction. And when you think of the podiums and things like that, the first 6 riders in MX2 in points are the only riders to land on the podium so far. Everts is one of those. He's got 2. Both of those were third. Round 3, round 4. So Switzerland and Riola Sardo in Sardinia. He was carrying an injury into the first couple of rounds. Should we be hoping for more from him now, though? Because the last 4 races, last 2 rounds, he's failed to get off the 7. He's gone 7-7, 7-7. For the Nissan Husqvarna factory rider, you would expect more, wouldn't you?
I do expect more. And it's a great question to pose, is what's holding him back? Is there some sort of lingering injury? Is it just not find the pace? I expect more from him every single weekend. So I'm open-minded to where this can go. I think he's really capable of great things. And really, if you look at coming into the season, all things being equal, you looked at the field, you looked at Liam's progress, you thought he would be in maybe not champion, but in the fight on the podium really often. And it just hasn't been there. And it feels like these other guys we've just finished talking about have kind of usurped his placing in kind of the hierarchy, right? Like, they have now become the expectation to be in the championship on the podium and near the front, where Liam, I don't know what he's missing. It would be really, I think, fascinating to talk to Stefan about kind of what is he going through. Is just a slump where he just can't find intensity? Is there something maybe we don't know about? But it's one of those situations where I have more questions than answers about Liam Everts currently.
Well, as far as going to the next round in Montevarchi, his dad, Stefan Everts, 10-time world champ, 101 Grand Prix victories, won there on 4 occasions in the past. So maybe there's going to be some riding tips around there. How different the track will be compared to when it was when we were the last there 20 years ago, when it would have been more of a traditional hard pack than what we're going to find with it being fluffed up and watered. But yeah, hopefully he can turn things around and start challenging for those podium positions, because he's a guy that deserves it. But nothing is a given, is it? You have to work hard for everything that sort of comes your way. Before we finish, I just want to talk briefly about the Racialist brothers, the Raciali, the plural version. The lead racialist in Latvia was Karlis. He was close to finishing on the podium for the first time in his MX2 career. He got passed on the final lap by Camden McClellan in the second race, and as a result of that, he got dumped off the podium to 5th overall. I would have thought he'd have been absolutely heartbroken, mortified, but he said he loved every single minute of it, the atmosphere, the Grand Prix. Yeah, he was disappointed, but it didn't override, it wasn't the overriding emotion for him. Because, the way that he rode, his speed was good, the consistency was good. And to be challenging for that podium was, for him, was basically what it was all about. Whether it was that weekend or the weekend before or the next weekend, he wants to be challenging for those podiums. And he was in that position to do so on the weekend. Just one silly little mistake on the final lap where he jumped offline, got into a couple of ruts. Camden came by. But a good effort from him, though, from Karlis, the number 47 racialist.
Yep. Yeah, he's probably excited to beat his brother. Because it had been going, it had been going the other way for quite a while. But yeah, I mean, home GP in the podium fight, which he really hasn't been. Are you disappointed? Sure, you should be. But also, what a huge, monumental step in the right direction. So you take this, you try to build upon it. Now the question is, you go to a racetrack that is wildly different than what we saw in Latvia. Conditions are different, climate's different, everything's going to be different. Can you find any continuity and keep the ball rolling in the right direction? Or is it a one-off home GP conditional type thing? That's the question we're going to find out. But I thought it was cool because, all the talk had been about his brother. And now he gets his moment in the sun. And I'm sure, it was a much needed boost for Yamaha. There's a lot of that there too. I thought it was a overall kind of feel good moment, even though the last lap heartbreak. Still, you have to walk out of there with a smile because not many people were talking about Carlos Reyes being on the podium fight going into Sunday. I certainly wasn't anyway.
And he mentioned his 17-year-old younger brother, Yanis, of course, 2-time European champ, 125 and then 250. On many occasions this year, he's shown flashes of speed. He's led races, he's led qualifying races. I think the occasion of just riding at his home Grand Prix got to him a little bit, which as an MX2 Grand Prix compared to a 125 or European 250 championship round, I think you've just put more on it in that respect. And I think it just kind of got to him a little bit. But still, he enjoyed the weekend as well. He'll learn from the experience. And just listening to or reading his post-race comments, he did say as much, maybe just got a bit nervous. He was tight right from the very beginning of the race, tried to ride through it. All those little things. Was he disappointed? Yeah, but at the same time, same as his brother, not going to lose sleep over it. It's part of the learning process, and he will be better for next time at that home Grand Prix. And now that he doesn't have that home Grand Prix pressure going into Italy, you would imagine that he's going to sort of overcome that adversity very, very quickly and find himself fighting at the front once again. But either way, Yanis, despite being, beaten by his brother at the weekend, being the second raceless, he is quite the talent, I think, and I think he's got a very, very bright future going forward.
Yeah, he's going to be fine. He's so young. These experiences will shape who he will be in a positive way moving forward. When it's not as consequential in a championship fight, or I think his kind of future, if Yamaha's not locking him up for the future, someone else is going to be very quickly because he's showing so much promise. So I kind of look at that as it will have a very positive impact next time type thing. And you need to learn these valuable lessons in the moment. But I have no doubts about what Yanis Reyes' future holds. This kid is going to be a guy that battles at the front when it may be later this year. It may be when he's 20, but he is going to be one of the guys fighting at the front as Langenfelder moves out and Sasha Kuna moves out. Like there's going to be a void at the front. Yeah. And he is going to be one of the guys that fills that.
There was a good crowd in Latvia, actually, wasn't there, before we go? They seemed very vocal, certainly for Pauls Jonas and the two racialist brothers in that second MX2 race. Seemed like there's probably more people there for, that I've seen for a long time. And that's the home rider effect with both guys, all three guys, having good success. And I mean sort of like, well inside the top 10 in that kind of sort of range. They do come out and they support, and they did that. And I think everybody had a great weekend. It was a shame we had the rain that we had on Friday and Saturday, but Sunday it turned out fantastic, and the racing was good, the track was good, and a memorable occasion for everybody, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great GP. I've only been there for Motocross of Nations, but
Yeah.
I was so pleasantly surprised by my experience there. Talking to other people that have been there, like everybody raves about the Latvian GP. So for them to have talent at the front for such a small country kind of reminds me of when Estonia has had some crazy good talent at the front. It's just such a unique thing they kind of have to latch onto because generationally, you don't know how often that's going to happen for that small of a population to put out that type of talent. So, yeah, they have as far as Latvia and motocross, seems like they have a pretty bright future ahead of them.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we are out of time, but we will be watching Thunder Valley this weekend, see how the Coonans get on. Lotte van Druna is also there in WMX this weekend, I believe.
That's great.
So, you've got a bit of an onslaught from Europe, mixing it with you guys and girls over there.
There's World Cup people everywhere.
Yeah, well, that's it. They're late kickoff times over here, but I'm sure people will be tuned either side of the Atlantic for football, for Thunder Valley. When we go to MXGP of Italy, Montevacchi the following week, when we get back on our 3-in-a-row schedule, you're going to be joining us in Portugal, aren't you, on the middle of those?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yep. And then taking a little break to the Azores.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Looking forward to that.
So, but yeah, we're out of time. But JT, Jason Thomas, Fly Racing, thanks for joining me on the MXGP official podcast once again, where we had something of a bro show in Latvia last time out, and obviously be interesting to see how the Cooners do in the US. And those who aren't racing this weekend, will enjoy that weekend off, and then we'll be back to it. Another 3 in a row, as we said, Italy, Portugal, straight in South Africa. And Jason and I will touch base with you again after South Africa. So until then, enjoy your weekend, whatever it is you're doing. And thanks for listening to the podcast. See you next time. Bye for now.
MXGP, the podcast.